All right, y'all, buckle up, because this one is a doozy. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. So for context, I, 25F, live just outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and I've been working as a nurse for the past 3 years. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and I've been super careful with my money because I've been saving up to buy my first home. You know, trying to do the responsible adult thing. Now let me tell you a little bit about my dad. He's one of those old-school types who prides himself on being the man of the house and handling everything himself. Growing up, he always had this thing about never asking for help, even when it was obvious he needed it. Like, we'd have a leaky pipe, and instead of calling a plumber, he'd spend 3 hours making it worse before finally caving. That's just who he is. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago, I get this letter in the mail. It's from some collections agency I've never heard of. And at first, I thought it was one of those scam letters, you know? Like, oh, you've won $1 million, just give us your bank account info. But then I saw my name on it, and it said I owed $100,000 on a loan I didn't even know existed. At first, I just stared at it like, this has to be a mistake. I mean, I've been super careful with my credit. I don't even have a car loan because I saved up to buy my used Honda Civic outright. Shout out to my 2012 Civic. She's not much to look at, but she's mine. So yeah, there was no way this was legit. But then I started thinking, what if someone stole my identity? I've read all those horror stories about people having their lives ruined by some random hacker on the internet. So I called the collections agency, already half panicking, expecting to hear that some dude in another state was living it up on my dime. Spoiler alert, it wasn't a hacker. When I called, this overly chipper customer service rep, who sounded like she's had just one too many cups of coffee, confirmed that, yes, I owed $100,000. She starts going over the details, and that's when she casually drops, oh, I see here that you co-signed this loan with your father. I'm sorry, what now? I was so stunned I couldn't even respond for a second. Finally, I managed to say, no, I definitely didn't co-sign anything. But she's all, well, your name and signature are right here on the paperwork. At this point, I'm seeing red because I know I didn't sign anything. I asked her to send me a copy of the documents, and she said she'd email them over. So I hang up and sit there, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. About 10 minutes later, I get the email, and sure enough, there it is. My dad's name, my name, and what looks like my signature. Except it's not mine. Like it was close, but not quite right. You know how when someone forges a signature, it's a little too neat? Yeah, it was like that. I'm sitting there heart-pounding, realizing that my dad forged my signature to take out a $100,000 loan. Who does that? Now at this point, you'd think I'd call him immediately, right? But no. I was too mad to even form coherent words, so I just sat there stewing. I needed a minute to process the fact that my dad had basically used my name as a shield to dodge his financial problems. Because, let's be real, that's exactly what this was. The next day, I finally worked up the nerve to call him. He answered on the second ring, all cheerful, like nothing was wrong. Me, hey Dad, I need to talk to you about something. Him, sure, what's up, kiddo? Did you put my name on a loan? Y'all, the silence that followed was deafening. He didn't even try to deny it. After what felt like an eternity, he finally said, look, I was going to tell you, but I didn't want to worry you. Didn't want to worry me? Sir, you just put me on the hook for $100,000, but sure, thanks for looking out for me. I asked him why he did it, and he launched into this long-winded explanation about how he was struggling to keep up with his bills, and how he didn't want to file for bankruptcy because it would ruin his reputation. Apparently, the loan was his only option, and he thought he could pay it off before I ever found out. Oh, and get this. He said he didn't think it would be a big deal, because in his words, you've got your whole life ahead of you. Your credit can handle a little hit. A little hit? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told him, do you have any idea what you've done? This could ruin me. I've been saving for a house, and now my credit is going to tank because of you. And he had the audacity to act offended, like I was the one overreacting. He kept saying, I didn't mean to hurt you, and you know I'd never do anything to jeopardize your future. Sir, that's exactly what you did. When I asked him how he even managed to get the loan in the first place, he admitted that he forged my signature. He said it so casually, like he was admitting to taking the last cookie from the jar or something. He even tried to justify it by saying, "I know your signature better than anyone else." At this point, I was done. I told him, "You need to figure this out because I'm not paying a dime of this debt. If you don't fix it, I'm going to report it as fraud." And do you know what he said? "You'd really do that to your own father?" Y'all, I was ready to scream. I said, "You mean the way you do this to your own daughter?" He got quiet after that, but I could tell he still didn't think he'd done anything wrong. I ended the call by telling him I needed time to figure out what to do next, but honestly, I already knew. There's no way I'm taking the fall for this. So after that call with my dad, I was sitting there just staring at my phone like, what the hell am I supposed to do now? Like I wasn't mad anymore. I was past mad. I was in that weird zone where you're so furious you just go completely numb. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, and every time I thought about him saying, "You'd really do that to your own father," I felt like throwing my phone across the room. So I did what any normal person would do in this situation. I Googled what happens if someone puts your name on a loan without your permission. And let me tell you, the results were not comforting. Everything I read basically said the same thing. If I didn't report it as fraud, the debt would stay in my name and I'd be responsible for paying it back. Cool, cool, cool. At this point, I knew I had to talk to someone who actually knew what they were doing. So I called a lawyer. I explained the whole situation, and the lawyer was like, "Yeah, this is a big deal. If your dad forged your signature, you need to report it to the loan company and the authorities. Otherwise, you'll be on the hook for the debt." My stomach dropped. The thought of having to report my own dad to the police, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. But at the same time, what choice did I have? This wasn't a couple $100 we were talking about. It was $100,000. That's life-ruining money. The lawyer gave me a game plan. I needed to file a fraud report with the collections agency, freeze my credit, and, if necessary, file a police report. I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there for a while, trying to process everything. I decided to call my mom because, well, moms are supposed to have all the answers, right? Wrong. As soon as I told her what happened, she gasped and said, "Oh, honey, your dad was just trying to protect the family. You know how much he's been struggling." Protect the family? Protect the family? I said, "Mom, how does ruining my credit protect the family? He forged my signature. That's literally a crime." And do you know what she said? "He didn't mean to hurt you. He just didn't know what else to do." At that point, I realized I wasn't going to get anywhere with her. She was in full-on defend dad at all costs mode, and nothing I said was going to change that. She even had the nerve to say, "Well, can't you just help him out? You're young. You'll recover." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The next day, I called the collections agency and told them the loan was fraudulent. They transferred me to their fraud department, and I had to go through this whole process of explaining what happened, sending them a copy of my ID, and signing a statement saying I didn't authorize the loan. It was exhausting, but at least I felt like I was doing something to fix the mess. And then came the hard part. The fraud rep told me that for the investigation to move forward, I'd need to file a police report. They said without a report it would be hard to prove my case, and the debt might stay in my name. I felt like the ground dropped out from under me. That night, I called my dad again. I told him everything I'd done so far and said, "Dad, if you don't fix this, I'm going to have to file a police report. I don't want to, but I can't let this ruin my life." He went silent for a long time. Then he said, "Do what you have to do." I couldn't believe it. I said, "That's it. You're not even going to try to fix this." And he said, "I don't have the money to pay it back. I didn't mean for it to get this far, but what's done is done. What's done is done." This man was acting like he spilled a drink, not like he committed fraud against his own daughter. I hung up and spent the next few hours pacing around my apartment, trying to figure out what to do. On one hand, this was my dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, who always had my back when I was a kid. But on the other hand, He'd completely betrayed me. The next morning, I went to the police station and filed the report. Let me tell you, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. The officer taking my statement was super nice, but I could tell he was trying not to judge me. Like, how do you even explain something like this? Yeah, my dad forged my signature on a $100,000 loan, and now I have to report him so my life doesn't implode. After I filed the report, I sent a copy to the collections agency. They said it would take a few weeks to process, but they'd put a hold on the debt in the meantime. That was a small relief, but the whole situation still felt like a nightmare. A couple of days later, my dad called me. He didn't apologize, didn't try to fix anything. He just said, "I hope you're happy." I said, "Happy? You think I'm happy about this? You did this to yourself. I didn't ask for any of this." He hung up on me, and we haven't spoken since. My mom keeps calling, saying I need to forgive him and find a way to move on. But honestly, I don't know if I can. Right now, I'm just trying to focus on rebuilding. My credit is still a mess, and it's going to take a long time to recover, but at least I'm not responsible for the debt anymore. I've had to block out most of my family because they're all siding with my dad, saying I shouldn't have gone to the police. So, Reddit, what do you think? Am I a terrible person for protecting myself? Or should I have just sucked it up and let my dad's mistake ruin my future? Because honestly, I don't even know anymore. TLDR, my dad secretly put my name on a $100,000 loan to avoid bankruptcy. I reported it as fraud, filed a police report, and now my family is acting like I'm the bad guy.